Hi, I'm Jim Knotts, President and CEO of the Vietnam Veterans Memorial Fund. Welcome to today's virtual reading of the names. 2022 marks the 40th anniversary of the dedication of the Vietnam Veterans Memorial in Washington, D.C. As part of our commemoration, we'll host an in-person reading of the names at the wall from November 7th through 10th, 2022, when all 58,281 names on the wall will be read aloud. In the lead up to that event, we'll be reading names each day online while sharing the photos of these heroes. For our daily virtual reading, the names of the service members will be read by month and day of death between the years 1956 and 1975 in alphabetical order for the given day. We apologize in advance for any mispronunciations. Know that our readers are doing their best to honor these service members. We hope you'll listen and watch each day and share with others as we remember and honor those who gave their lives during the Vietnam War.
Dennis James Adamansky, Francis Ray Addis, Jerry Leroy Addis, Robert Charles Agato, James John Offrens, Jerry Joe Allen, Herbert Marshall Allen, Gordon Guy Anderson, William Prescott Arthur, Harold Allen Atcher, Richard David Baca, John Robert Ball, Gilbert Ray Bargman, David Russell Bartholomew, John Petty Batterson Jr., Fred Gordon Bertolino, Ronald Lee Best, Troy Bethia, Carl Joseph Biker, Dwight Thomas Blackwater, Frederick Delano Blackwell, William A. Belwitt Jr., John Rodman Blaschnach, Paul Arthur Boguski, Francis Arthur Bond, Thomas James Bradley, Richard Allen Bradley, John Stephen Brown, Dennis William Brown, John Wayne Brown, Gary Lee Burgess, Lloyd Lynn Buzzard, Robert Joseph Cara, Gary William Carlson, Leroy Charles Chech, Luther Malcolm Chappell, Harold Roy Christensen, Larry Ray Clark, Ralph John Klein, Richard Wilson Cole, David Burke Hollins, Patrick Allen Connolly, Bobby Larry Corns, Jack Edward Cossins, Charles Michael Cotton, Harvey C. Crabtree Jr., Robert Earl Craythorne, Raymond D. Crowder Jr., Donald Leo Curtin, James Robert Daniel, David Deach, William Jerry Dillon, George Richard Dover, John Robert Dowling, Lloyd J. Downs, Harvey Albert Dewey Jr., Glenn Henry Dusbebeck, Richard Thomas Dutro, Alan Norbert Engel, Edward Lee Fales Jr., Wayne Samuel Fielden, Anthony H. Figueroa Jr., Russell Lewis Filiberti, Hubert Joseph Fink.
Reginald William Fitchett, Kenneth Dean Frakes, Tim Laverne Fritz, James Ray Fry Jr., William Michael Geyer, Raymond Willard Godwin, Robert Walter Golden, Paul Eugene Good, Thomas Leslie Gordon, Craig Haberline, Jeffrey H. Hall, Wilbur Lewis J. Halleck Jr., Edward Malone Hardwick, Monty Ray Harper, Glenn Sheldon Hawkness Jr., John Wallace Haynes, Michael David Helmstetler, Robert Knapp Henderson Jr., David Franklin Henry, Kenneth Wayne Hicks, Charles John Hildenbrand, John Robert Hill, James Gary Hinch, Randy Victor Hines, Robert Lynn Hively, James Dean Hogue, Calvin Jean Hunt, Elijah Ingram, B. C. Izard, Robert James Gendra, Herbert Lawrence Johnson, Timothy Allen Johnson, Michael James Johnson, David Wayne Jorgensen, Patrick Dennis Cadow, Philip Alfred Caulhagen, Arlen Joseph Kennedy Jr., Garland Brian King Jr., Carl Sanford Kaiser, William Joseph Coons, Neftali John LeBoy, Larry Robert Ladd, Blaine Wilson Landers, Keith Wayne Larimer, Lawrence Ray Lassiter, Donald Edward Layfield, Thomas Isaac Ledbetter, John Patrick Lee, John Joseph Link, Paul Frederick Little, Leonardo Lopez Vasquez, David Guy Lucas, Richard Colin Lundy, David Allen Madden, Eugene L. Mansell III, Joseph Thomas Martin, Robert Thomas Martin Jr., Henry Don Matthews, Frederick Cecil McCaskill, Hobart Wilson McComas Jr., Roy Clifford McEwen, Kenneth Lewis McFall, Joseph Ronald McElvoy, Charles Anthony McKinney,
Robert A. McLaughlin, Jr., Charles Edward McCrae, Reuben D. Mercado Gutierrez, George Daniel Miller, Stephen Richard Miller, Vincent Gerald Muller, Donald Durwood Morris, Eddie Lee Moten, Jr., Bobby Lewis Murphy, Howard Hamilton Nelson, James Michael Nesselrote, Michael William Noderman, Daniel Thomas Nutley, Daniel Gerard O'Connell, Robert William O'Keefe, Paul Laverne Oakes, Jr., Larry Rex Olson, Gerald S. Perlstein, Gerald Arthur Phillips, Bernard Lawrence Pierce, Robert Harrison Pilk, Ignacio Portugal, Jr., Bobby Wayne Price, John Henry Priest, Jr., Michael Eugene Prothero, James Lavelle Purser, John Vincent Quintal, David Shelton Rain, George Randolph, Bobby Joe Ratliff, Willie Joe Rhodes, Cameron A. Rice, Andrew Gus Richard, John James Reek, Jr., Arthur Paul Roberson, David Allen Robin, Israel Rodriguez, Alan Michael Rushan, Jeffrey Thomas Rowson, Ronald James Saiz, Ernest Seiichi Sakai, Roberto Samaniego, Daniel Joseph Sandstedt, Paul Henry Schaefer, Frederick Willie Schaefer, Sheldon Boris Schulman, Wayne Thomas Schumacher, Marvin Scott, William Norman Scott, Lloyd Andrew Sellers III, William Paul Schaefer, Victor Thomas Schaefer, Lufkin Scott Sharp, Luis Jose Simancas, Ronald Earl Simpson, William James Sipple, William Douglas Sisler, Kazimierz Henryk Slomiani, Fred Stephen Smart, James Buford Smith, Michael Vincent Sorter, John Donald St. Peters, Bobby Dwayne Stanley, Robert Franklin Steele,
Clyde Wayne Stevens, Edward Howard Stevens, Ronald Richard Stewart, Merrill Lawrence Suitmeyer, James Lane Talley, Leonard Vito Tedesco, Kenneth Ray Temples, Fiatele Taulago Teo, Charles Edward Thornton, Ronald Gale Trogdon, Stephen Dennis Van Dyke, Robert Eugene Veach, Joseph Stanley Vaisley, Jr., Raymond Allen Voss, Albert Charles Wall, Jr., Harry Allen Walling, Johnny Mack Watson, Jackie Don Weatherly, Barry Kent Weaver, Ronald Albert Wenzel, Jeffrey Scott Wazalowski, Noel Thomas West, Richard Edward White, Burr McBride Willie, Robert Alwyn Williams, Fred Wilson, John Richard Winger, John Lane Winters, David Mitchell Wood, James Thomas Woods, Gary Dorvin Woods, Robert Frank Wright, Robert George Zink, Philip Otto Zummalin, Jr.,